how can you customize the Copilot metrics dashboard? There are two ways you can customize this. First, you can customize directly from the Power BI online, which means you click on edit to edit the report itself. And you can, for example, add your own section or your own space and add maybe a line graph. Let's say, for example, I want a line graph. I can drag and drop this line graph and bring this here, for instance, and I can expand this, and I can commit any legend depending on what I want to visualize, right? So I can look at the Copilot Enterprise usage data. For example, there is the all usage data, and I can view the total engaged users versus the integration. So if I put this on my x-axis, for instance, and I put the total number of engaged users on my y-axis, and for the legend, maybe I can even add this in my integration. So if I expand this, so you can customize this and add any dashboard you want, or any visualization into the dashboard, in the report, on any of the pages. And once you're happy with that, you click on save to save the report, or if you just want a copy of the report. So once you do that, the next time it refreshes, that new visualization that you added will always show up as well on the report. What if you want to go to a deeper level? I'm going to show you now how you can customize directly from the Power BI desktop. This itself really expands the capabilities and to what degree you want to design the report. Let's go into that. I'm going to take you through how you might customize the dashboard using your Power BI desktop. So you can download the original source of the Power BI dashboard. If you scroll down to the customization section, this should take you directly to the repo. So this is open source. Feel free to clone. So you're going to clone this repo into VS Code, for example. So I can just clone this repo. The most important directory is the source directory. Ignore any other file you're seeing here. You don't need that for the Power BI desktop customization. Go to the source directory and open the PBIP file directly from your Power BI desktop. You will need Power BI desktop to be able to customize the dashboard. And Power BI desktop only works on Windows machines. It doesn't run on Mac. So I have a virtual machine here that I can showcase what that looks like, but you will need to run this on a Windows device. So let's clone this repo. So I have cloned this in VS Code. You can expand the source directory. You see the PBIP file. You would also find all the corresponding files working with Power BI directly here. PBIP is Power BI project, which allows you to be able to manage Power BI projects as code, which means all your models and visualizations are text-based and JSON files that you can directly modify directly within your favorite IDE. But if you don't know what you're doing, try not to come here to modify. Once you've cloned the repo, if you want, you can create your dev branch. For instance, I'm just going to create a new branch from the main. So I'm going to say add a team level. So I want to add a team level modification to this branch. So I create my branch, and this has been cloned. What you then need to do is to open the source directory in your Windows directory or in Finder. So once you open that, you will see the Power BI PBIP file itself. So this is in the source directory, and you only need to double click on this to open in Power BI Desktop. Again, Power BI Desktop doesn't work on Mac, so I'll show how you can open this in the in Windows machine, on a Windows machine. Okay, so I've opened this up in the Windows machine. You will see this is the PBIP Power BI Desktop project. You just double click on that. This should launch in Power BI. Sometimes you get that error message. It just means that some cache that was in the Power BI stopped it from opening. You just need to quit Power BI and launch it again, and it will open up the report itself. You can ensure you log into Power BI. I think I opened this twice. I should have opened this just once. So I'm just going to close this. Great. All right. So this is the dashboard. You can customize a lot more with the Power BI desktop. So let's say, for example, I want to change my API, so I can click on Transform Data. That will take me to the content of the different data tables. The credentials, you may get a message like this. You just click on Edit Credentials. This will be similar to the same thing on how you authenticate from the front end. You use basic authentication, put your username and password in, and you paste your, and then you paste your token. And then click on Connect. So if the authentication works fine, then you should see all the tables refresh. So be sure to check if all the tables are working fine. So you might want to look at those ones with the exclamation mark and let them refresh. Typically, once you've configured your credentials, the credentials will be cached or stored with Power BI Desktop. So the next time you open Power BI Desktop, you may not need to authenticate again. To modify or clear the cache, go to data source settings, just as I clicked on just now, and then you would see the data source, and you can click on edit permissions, and you can come in here, set your privacy level or edit the credentials to the data source, and click on OK, and that's going to refresh for the data source in the file. So just check to be sure that all tables have access. You would also see where the parameters are configured directly from here. You can click on Manage Parameters, and here you would see all the parameters that were surfacing on the app's installation. Your enterprise log and the data type, it is organization list, GitHub API. So if you want, you can add another parameter here for a team name. Let's say you want to do every team to be able to deploy there separately. The range start and the range end are internal date fields that help you to configure incremental refresh. So if you want to configure incremental refresh, for instance, once the date starts and the range end has been specified, you can right click on the data table that has date fields, and you can configure incremental refresh for those dates. I will show you that shortly. So another way you can test this parameter, so you see a number of functions here and other report files. For the parameters, you would find another folder for the parameters. So you would see the enterprise log, so you can manually enter this here and specify the organization list, the API, and any date range you want to use, for example, and that will allow the data tables to refresh. So all the tables you see here, the general rules of Power BI customization all apply. You can always modify all this as the case may be. So let's say you want to add team level. So you can create a new data table. So you just click on new data source, of course, or if you directly have the query. I have a query for the team level that may be able to save you time, and I'm going to share this now. Here is the query for getting teams, GitHub teams from any GitHub organization. Let's go through this quickly. You pass in the team's URL for that organization, and this query will run the REST API and get 100 per page for the first page, and then it will continue to iterate for each page, increasing the page number by 1. So it then retrieves all the teams and converts them to a table. So we already have this function already prepared for you within the data model. If you scroll down to functions, you will find a function called getTeams, and it's exactly the same thing you saw on the gist. I'm going to share the link to the gist in the in the YouTube video in the comments. So we have a function called getTeams. So if you want to retrieve, say, the teams for each organization, first you have to know the team's API URL, the API URL. So you just go to GitHub documentation for REST API. You go to teams, and under teams, if you want to list all teams in an organization, list all teams in an organization that are visible to the authenticated user. So it goes with /teams. So you want to get the orgs and the organization name, then you go to /teams. So we can do the same thing from Power BI. So you can either go to the list of organizations that we already have prepared, which should be here. So you've got a list of orgs, and you have the Copilot URL coming from there. So if you check the query under this, you will notice that this is being prepared directly from two different tables. So if you want, you can add an extra column here, right? We're going to add a custom column for the team's URL, which would just be the suffix next to the API. So teams, then this will be the /orgs / and we're going to concatenate that with the organization name and then the team's URL, the route, and that's it. So I'll click on this. This is now going to create the team's URL. So what I'm now going to do is I'm going to create a separate table that will be dependent on the organizations, that will be specifically for teams. So what I'll do now is I'm just going to reference this table, right? And I'm going to rename this as teams. Yep, let's keep this there. So I have teams now. So what you now need to do next is then we need to modify. We don't need all the columns referenced in the table that is referenced. We only need to take the columns we want. So I'm just going to keep the team's URL and the organization name. Okay, so we don't need the whole table of the organizations. We only need 2 columns from that table. So 2 columns from the organizations table, and we only need the organization column as well as the newly created column, team's URL. Those are the 2 we need. Voila. So that will just select just the 2 columns we need rather than importing the entire table in the reference here. So this one is just the suffix in the team's URL. Well, one thing to bear in mind is for every single row is an API call that will call as many pages of teams that are available in that organization, which can go into hundreds and hundreds for people that have so many orgs and so many teams in each organization. So, which is why we created the organization list parameter, so that you limit the number of organizations that you want to comb through. You typically may not need Copilot in all the organizations. So if you don't want to get into the API rate limit issue and you don't want to exceed your limit, you can either throttle the query in the function such that you can delay every 5 seconds, for instance, or every 10 seconds, so that you don't use all your 5,000 requests per hour and throttle that across many hours. More so, you can configure your refresh to be running in the middle of the night, so that may not, it's not going to impact your peak period. So one thing you can do is to add the list of organizations in the parameters. So for me now, I want to list just these 3 organizations. So when I go next to teams, it will only show me just those 3 organizations. I'm now going to add the column that we call the getTeams function. So this will be teams, and we want to call the getTeams function. and pass the parameter, the team's URL. Remember, we're already prepending that in the function with the GitHub REST API prefix. And then we just click on OK. So this will add the table columns. And if we expand, if there are teams in the table, this should return columns. In my case, I realized that the organizations that I selected, I didn't have enterprise, I didn't have admin rights on those organizations. So it failed. I was getting access denied error. So I have removed all the other organizations from the org list. And you can see here now that the columns are, the response is coming back from the API. So if you want, you can just expand that. I'm just going to rename this back to what it to. I don't think I need this. Let's keep it as teams, and then you can expand all the records into rows like this, and voila, you'll have the team name. Now you can have the team ID and things like that. So if you want, you can just keep just the team's name, maybe the team URL, maybe a team slug. Yeah, that's it. Maybe if it's a secret team or not, that may be useful. Okay. So select all the columns you want. Sometimes Power BI doesn't load all the columns from the response that you get. You may need to click on that link to show the response. So I'm just gonna keep these ones. Yeah, so we have all the team names. So what we can then do now is to combine this with the Copilot seeds and use this to get, now we have the team names. We'll then call the Copilot teams metrics teams API to retrieve the Copilot seeds for each team. So first is to read the documentation. So the REST API endpoint to get Copilot metrics for a team. So this will just use the org /the org /the team /the team slug /copilot /metrics. And I think we already have everything before this one. So let's see how this can work. So let's add a new column. Or what we can do is to reference this again and then remove the columns that we don't want. Maybe just the team slug is enough. Teams.slug. So I'm just going to reference this and we can call this Teams Copilot usage. Right, but we don't need all the columns here, so we only need just the organization and teams.slug. I hope this works. Yay! All right. So we then need to add the Copilot URL for each team, right? So we just need to look at the documentation. The documentation says the org/team/team slug / the Copilot metrics. So the only variables we need are the org name and the team slug, which we already have. So I'm just going to add a custom column here and paste that in. So this will be Copilot team URL. So of course, let's put our strings in there. And this. than that. So we need to replace this one now with the organization and replace this with the team slug. All right. Okay. So let's look at this and see if it's well formed. So the orgs slash the org slash team slash the team slug slash copilot slash metrics. So what we then need to do is to pass it into a function. There's a function called get copilot details. So let us now add a column to this copilot usage and invoke. So copilot details. So let's just say this is the team's copilot details. And I'll just select get copilot details, and I'm going to pass that URL in. That's the one we want. And wow, amazing. So let's expand this table. Make sure you've loaded all the columns. Yeah, there's just one column there. Again, as usual, you don't need that extra bit. If you want, you can take it out. So this is team copilot details, and I can expand this into new rows. Or no copilot details. Why isn't this working? Oh, yes, I remember. According to the documentation, you will only get copilot metrics for teams that have at least 5 members. The response contains metrics for up to 28 days prior. Metrics are processed once per day for the previous day, and the response will only include data up until yesterday. And I also remember that you need at least 5 members of the team. Only organization owners, parent of the enterprise can view Copilot metrics for a team. Yeah, so it will only calculate metrics for teams that have at least 5 members. If the team members are not up to 5, you don't get any Copilot metrics calculated for them. So I would advise you check this and test it out. Once you finish this table now, you can expand for that further, and when you expand, you will see something similar to this, just as you've got org usage, and you can break down the usage into all org usage data, and you can check for code completions, check for IDE chats, and can expand all those into separate tables. So this will help you to get Copilot org usage. What I'll do is this for the teams, the query for creating the teams, and for creating the Copilot usage, I will also drop that within the same gist. So you'll find that within the Power Query gist that is here. And let me know what you think. Thank you.